I'm losing my mind over this. This could actually be a picture of the Lone Rock woman. There are these long-standing legends of Lone Rock Beach of a murderous woman who roams the beach at night and she goes after campers. These police descriptions of a woman with wild hair and these menacing eyes, but it's always just kind of been a story. There was never really any proof of this until a phone turned up on the beach. So 3 teenagers found an iPhone that was abandoned in the sand, and before they turned it in, they did what anybody would do. They would browse the camera roll. They ended up finding this unnerving photo of a woman who clearly took this photo with the self-timer, and she roughly seemed to match the description. When police eventually turned the phone back to the owner, they did not recognize the woman, and nobody else on that beach the day that the photo was taken seemed to spot her, leaving us with the question, could this be the only known photo of the murderous woman of Lone Rock Beach?
Yo, what's up? These are Kids That Killed, Part 5. Today on our list, Aaron Campbell. On July 2nd, 2018, 6-year-old Alesha McPhail was nowhere to be found throughout her house. Her parents searched her room, the living room, and every other part of the house, but she could not be found. But the crazy thing was her bicycle was still parked out on the curb, so she couldn't have gone far. I mean, she was only 6 years old and didn't have a habit of running away, so her parents began to worry. But it turns out that this 16-year-old psychopath Aaron Campbell had actually contacted Alesha's dad the night before trying to buy some drugs, and when he went to pick him up and Alesha's dad wouldn't answer, he snuck inside the home, grabbed Alesha while she was sleeping, and kidnapped her. Alesha then woke up while she was being carried around by her kidnapper, and he told her that she had nothing to worry about and that he was a friend of her father's and he was going to get her home safely. But that was far from the truth. It'd be shortly after the young girl woke up that the 16-year-old would move on to brutally beat, rape, and kill this young 3-foot-tall 6-year-old girl. It wouldn't be until the morning after this incident where the parents and neighbors would have a search party going out to look for the young girl, and they would find her dumped in a woodland area about 15 minutes away from their home with over 117 different injuries on her body. It was said that they found trace evidence of semen on this girl's body, and it was even claimed by forensics that she was beaten long after she had already died. It was later found out by the police during an investigation that Aaron Campbell was the one who committed these horrific acts on this young girl, and at the age of 20, when he was in prison already, he actually got beat and his front tooth went through the top of his lip. Sorry, Aaron, but you got what was coming to you.
In 1922, the tomb of King Tut had been unearthed after over 3,000 years. And with the opening of the tomb came a curse of death with it. The man who financed the tomb's opening was dead only 3 months after King Tut's mummified body was removed from his burial site. This man had gotten bit by a mosquito while in Egypt, and one day while shaving his face, he reopened the mosquito bite. This led to blood poisoning that would claim the very first victim of the so-called Pharaoh's curse. His half-brother who had visited the tomb ultimately died of the same cause. Another man hosted a dinner party at his home in Baltimore where he was showing his friends the items he had collected from King Tut's tomb. 30 minutes after his guests had left for the evening, his house suddenly went up in flames. He could have escaped the fire, but in desperation to save the manuscript he had been working on, he went back inside and never came out. The name of the manuscript he was trying to save? The Egyptian Book of the Dead. Another man unalived himself, but not before writing a note that said, "I have succumbed to a curse which forces me to disappear." The message was written in his own blood. There are almost a dozen more victims of the Pharaoh's curse. Check out episode 10 of my podcast for the full story.
Watch as one night, Manuel's camera, set up at the perimeter of his yard, captures something in the darkness. It's a terrifying, wolf-like creature. When zoomed in, you can see its distorted face clearly. It remains for a moment, and then quickly retreats back into the underbrush.
Don't stay out late. There are a lot of things that roam around at night. You're out by yourself.
I haven't told a scary story in a while, but I watched this video and I heard what she said and I felt like it was the time. So some of you that have been with me for a while know that I used to tell scary stories a lot. I kind of stopped, but I want to get back into it. And Also, some of you may have been with me long enough to know that some creepy things, some weird things, some random things have happened in my house. So I went through a really long period in my life where I didn't have faith in God anymore. And during that time, there's some weird things going on in my house. But like, just like subtle things that were really weird, like things would be moved or weird sounds, stuff like that. So I started talking to this guy who believed in God, and he sort of kind of told me that I needed to rebuild my relationship with God and stuff. And I was completely against it initially. And you know what? He didn't bail on me at that point, and slowly I did start rebuilding this relationship that I had. So this one night, he doesn't live close to me, so this one night I went to go see him, and I stayed the night at his house. This wasn't the first time that I'd ever stayed at his house or anything like that, but I was having a really hard time sleeping, and he was asleep, and I was just kind of laying there. So I'm awake, and he starts kind of talking in his sleep. And so it kind of sounds like he's praying. And so like I kind of turned to him and like asked him if he was okay, and he put his hand over my mouth and was like, "Be quiet, it's going to hear you." And like I immediately just like felt sick to my stomach because I was like, "What?" I like pushed his hand off my face, and he like continued kind of talking in his sleep, sort of praying. So needless to say, I didn't really sleep at all that night. So I'm driving back to my house, and he was on the phone with me, and I asked him if he remembered dreaming last night. And he says, "Yeah, what do you know?" And I was just immediately like, "What do you mean, what do I know?" So he starts telling me that his dream was that we were in the room that we were in, and there was a black shadow figure thing in the corner, and it was like coming for me, and it like was going to attach itself to me. And I hadn't told him that since I had been more open to praying and things like that, that I had started seeing this black shadow figure thing in my peripheral vision around my house. So I immediately panicked, and I told him about it. And he said, "Whenever you get home, you need to bless your house." So on my way home, I stopped at Walmart, picked up some stuff that I thought would be helpful in blessing my house. Never done this before. So I did what I thought I needed to do to bless my house, but things got a lot worse. If you're interested in knowing what happened next, leave a comment and I'll make a part 2.
Sorry for the wait. Here's a really scary one for you guys for waiting for me. So my aunt lived in Toronto and we lived in Mississauga, right? My aunt has been dealing with a lot since she gave birth to her son at the time, and so my mom said, "Hey, why don't you come to our house and stay with us for a few days just to get your mind off of things." So she came over, and the whole time she had to stay in my room. Her and her son stayed in my room the whole time for a few days, but she just stayed there. She didn't talk to anybody, she just was quiet. My mom was getting worried, so she called her brother, and she's like, "Why don't you come and like take her to your house since it's closer to her house and where her husband is, so you guys can take care of her and see how she is there." Now this is key information that you have to remember what I'm going to tell you right now. My sister goes to bed at like maybe 8 p.m. and my uncle ends up coming over at 9 p.m. Okay? My sister falls asleep at 8 p.m. and she doesn't know my uncle came over because she's asleep, so my uncle comes over at 9 p.m., okay? We're telling him my aunt's being a little weird and stuff, and she just maybe wants to stay over near her house or something, or a different environment, so she ends up going home with my uncle that night. That same night, me and my mom started talking about how weird things have been since she came over, just the vibe, the energy, and how weird she's been acting. And so my mom ends up calling like a witch doctor from back home in Pakistan. She calls him and she tells him a little information about her, but what he told us kind of scared us. He said that someone had done black magic to my aunt back home in Pakistan, to my aunt, and that's why things have gotten really bad for her around that time. Someone was jealous of my aunt and her husband's marriage, and she did something. So my mom and me are pretty spooked, and we're like, okay, let's just call it a night, let's just go to bed. Mind you, I slept in my sister's room on a mattress on the floor. I didn't sleep in my room that night. The next day, my sister wakes up in the morning, and she brushes her teeth and everything, and then she checks my room, and sees my aunt sitting on my bed looking at her like this. My sister's like, okay, and she closes the door. Didn't think much of it, and she went downstairs and she went on the computer. I wake up maybe an hour or two later and I run downstairs and I tell her what happened like last night. Like, oh my God, someone did black magic to our aunt, like this and that. And, you know, and she's like, well, where is she? I'm like, she went home last night. My sister's like, what are you talking about? I just saw her upstairs on your bed looking at me. And her face, like, blood dropped down from her face and everything. And she's like, Sonia, no, I saw her. Making a part 2 as we speak right now. Go check it out.
Normal looking photos that have a disturbing backstory. Part 27. This photo shows an elderly couple doing the hokey pokey with a man named Dennis Rader, also known as the BTK Killer. He installed alarms for a living, and ironically, many clients booked his services to prevent him from entering their homes. This photo shows Luchadora Juana Barraza. She was sold to a man for 3 beers by her mother until her stepdad found her at age 17. Over the years that followed, she would strangle and rob over 45 old women that reminded her of her abusive mom. The man in the background is Christopher Wilde, aka the Beauty Queen Killer. This picture was taken on June 15th, 1984, and Chris is scouting future victims at a beauty pageant. This photo shows John Edward Robinson holding a baby girl named Tiffany. Just one day before this photo was taken, he murdered the baby's mother and gave Tiffany to his brother, saying that she was adopted. His brother, along with Tiffany, didn't find out the truth for 15 years.